we don't usually have guest presenters from off campus for our sessions in the CTE, but we're very fortunate today to have one. She is a professor at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and she's an expert on this particular topic, telecollaborative language teaching. She was an acquaintance of Trish and Joanne. That's how we made contact with her. And so she was in this part of the country and made herself available to come in to give some presentations. At least we're really happy about that. So thank you.
Well, the honor is mine, I have to say. First of all, I'm just delighted to be here. I did have the chance to talk here. We're trying to remember how many years ago, and I best not say, but you've grown so much since then. So thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate that. And I hope that what I have to talk about, the word expert makes me nervous, okay? I have to say. It's just something that I love, I guess would be, I'm passionate about. Okay, I don't know if I would use the word expert, but I want to talk about telecollaboration. I'm not sure if you have experience with that. I'm not going to ask yet. I know you have. I want to show you some definitions, and I think, or words that have been applied to that, and maybe you say you'll recognize it under a different term. Okay, so I'll talk about that first. But before I do, I want to start with just take a minute and ask you, what are some of the jobs? I'm assuming all of you are in teacher education. What are some of the jobs? No? 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 Okay. You can still answer this question. What are some of the jobs that teachers that are being prepared now on campus will be then preparing their students for in the future? What are some of the jobs? Just any ideas? Ready?
I would just say, who knows? I mean, probably things that we can't even fathom right now.
Exactly. Exactly. These are some of the predictions, okay? They're scary, some of them. 3D food printer, shareability auditor, body modification ethicist. Don't want to think about that one too much. Rewilder. This is people who would go and rewild areas like landfills or toxic areas, repopulating with nature areas that are have been reclaimed. Augmented reality architects, simulation specialists, drone traffic optimizers, which from what I understand they need right now. Media remixer, simplicity expert, I love that one, because it's probably something you could use now. Organ agents, which would go with the shareability auditor, maybe, no, would be someone working hand in hand with body modification ethicist, I'm assuming. And nostalgicists, who are very close to simplicity expert. These are architects or interior designers who, for people who have the money and the time and the desire, may want to redesign their house to represent the decade they were young in. So they may redo their house to represent the 60s or something. So this is from some of these professions already exist, and the predictions are that many of the others will be in play within the next 20 years. Right? So that's sort of the premise of where I'm going. With these new concepts such as share economy, collaborative consumption, and peer economy, and this idea of global citizens that we talked about in the class that I was in today. Thank you very much for that. As you said, many jobs are going to disappear. And no, you said that many jobs are going to disappear to be replaced by professions we can't even imagine. So teachers now and in the very near future must teach, make decisions about what to teach and how to teach it based on things you don't even know that they're going to need yet. And that's a really, really difficult concept to get your head around. And for our students, I think it's even harder, right? So I propose that this might be a way forward. The future 2030, today's 8-year-olds will be 21. That's a scary idea because they're in schools now and they'll be maybe hanging around with robotic friends or something. And the predictions for the top skills that will be required by employers. I don't know if you can read that because it's kind of small, but its number one skill will be effective communicators. Number one skill. So anyone who's in language education has got a very, very important role. That means being able to communicate through different mediums, not just verbally. It means being able to communicate through technology, whatever technology is at hand. So I've said here, we're not just language teachers, we're communication teachers, because that's number one skill of the 21st century. There also will be looking for problem solvers, working collaboratively, and being flexible in their thinking and innovative. You've heard all this before, I'm sure. And my question, and it's a question I posed in the last class as well, for me, what is central to all of these competencies is language and communication. Because if you don't have language, you can't think in the first place. And that's Vygotsky, and I saw Mind in Society back there. Well, the first thing I saw is Vygotsky's Mind in Society. If you don't have a language, you can't think in the first place. If you can't communicate what you're thinking, you can't collaborate with others, because if there's no way, if you're not able to communicate with others, that you can actually collaborate. And even if you can solve a problem without thinking, which is kind of strange, if you can't get your solution across to someone else, a lot of good it does you, right? So communication is an axis right there to all of that. And we tend to forget that as we move towards these digital competences of technology. We tend to focus just on technology, when really communication is key to being able to use this technology correctly, I think, which is, again, the premise behind what I've called e-functioning. It's the ability to cope personally and professionally with the conditions and challenges of working and communicating and living with others in different ways. I love making cartoons, so I throw them in one again. And this one here, this is Dude, an avatar girl in Second Life. Well, he says, I do have a girlfriend. He says, Dude, an avatar in Second Life does not count as a girlfriend. Actually, it may soon. And I've done a lot of playing around with avatars in Second Life. I don't know if people here, anyone's done any excursions into Second Life? You have? I'm not surprised. We've had quite an interesting conversation this last hour. Second Life is an interesting concept. I don't think, education really at first said we got to go there. I don't think we need to go there personally. I've played around with it. I don't think it is the way forward, and yet, at the same time, what I'm seeing, the competences I've learned in Second Life, I can see becoming applicable in everyday life. And if you allow me a little bit of a side to explain that, my first excursions into Second Life, I had someone who was helping me out. I had an avatar buddy, right? And then he just left me alone in the second or third lesson and at a discotheque. Yes, I was in a discotheque in Second Life. Okay, it's hard to imagine, I know. And they showed me how to do the avatar dance. No, my avatar was dancing, all this stuff. And an avatar came up to me and said, because my name of the avatar was Melinda Aristocrat. It's a default, the second name, okay? I did not choose it. My avatar was called Melinda Aristocrat. An avatar came up to me and said, Melinda, you are in my space. And I just panicked and went offline and assumed that I had solved the problem. But what had happened was in Second Life, my avatar went into default mode, which happens to be this. Okay, so my avatar was still in the discotheque like this. And I did not know. And I apparently offended a lot of other avatars around me by being a default mode avatar in a discotheque in Second Life. Now, is that applicable to real life? Not really, but at the same time, just last year, I started hearing all about this Go Pokemon, catching the Pokemons. It's on your wrist now. It's in your hand. The virtual world is slowly moving into our real life, and it will be here. And so knowing how to have a meeting, this for me is one of the competencies our students will have, is knowing how to have a meeting where you're sitting next to a real person, avatar, real person, avatar, avatar, real person, and knowing that you cannot sit on the avatar's lap. Right? That's not an empty seat, because someone is seeing through virtual glasses the person sitting there. Things like that. It begins to merge. So these are competences that I may be wrong, but I predict coming. So this is what I'm calling, that was a divergence, but that's what I'm calling the E-functioning. You know, knowing how to deal with all these technologies with these competences. So, of course, there are a lot of other challenges facing the millenniums. Unknown jobs, as we already mentioned. There's a growing materialism and individualism. I'm sure you're all seeing that in your own students. An obsession with the physical image because it's out there online, right? A shifting economy, an uncertain future, that's scary. Severe environmental issues, more visible bullying, both cyber and it going viral. Change in values, this idea that you can put your entire private life online. Something that for us is unthinkable, but for the newer generations is, so what? Yeah? And then the growing population diversity, the need for openness to diversity. So all of this can bring a lot of confusion if it's not handled carefully. What does this have to do with telecollaboration? It's what does it mean for teachers? I used to love the Jetsons. I don't know. You're probably too young to remember the Jetsons. Okay. So what it means for us is that for good or bad, we're teaching kids who are smarter than us in many, many ways. And that's kind of scary. And our teachers will be teaching kids that are smarter than them. They're wired differently. Memory retention is different now. They don't need to memorize everything if they have it right there on hand, and so they're not memorizing, they don't need it. They're emotionally and culturally different because of the way that the global connections, it is having an impact on their cultural values and their emotional values. They have, like I said, information at their fingertips, and that means they're less willing to accept the teacher as the expert, which may be a good thing, So, what does this mean for schools, for good or bad? We need to open up our classrooms because teachers no longer are experts, so we need to start bringing in different points of view, different perspectives. There's growing competition for alternative education resources. If a kid at 16, I don't know what age you can leave school here. 16. If a kid at 16 has decided enough of the brick and mortar, I'm not interested, you're not teaching me what I need, they can leave and go to Khan Academy and learn in their own way. They can get an online degree, et cetera, et cetera. So there's alternative education, and that's just going to multiply. So we've got to be ready for that. And education is going to be based on individual terms from now on. So here's where I'm coming in. The one possible step forward to opening up the classroom to maybe beginning to adapt education is through telecollaboration. So, sorry. What we were talking about, what is telecollaboration? How long has it been around? Okay, telecollaboration in theory has been around since around the 1800s and early 1900s when in the first documented telecollaborative exchange, which is just collaborating at a distance, was letter exchanges between two classes in Scotland. Okay, and then in 1996 there was a compendium headed by Mark Warschauer. Don't know if you know. Okay, you know Mark Warschauer. A compendium in 1996, telecollaboration with computer-mediated communication. So it's been around longer than most people think, almost 2 decades ago. But it's not that mainstream yet. Now, there's a lot of definitions. So is the use of computer and or digital tools to promote learning through social interaction and collaboration, thus moving the learning process beyond the physical boundaries of classrooms. If I asked a lot of people, what word would you put in there, they may say telecollaboration, they may say internet-based intercultural exchange, they may say virtual exchange, they may say online intercultural exchange, they may say teletandem, which is the word that you recognize, teletandem. So this is why I didn't want to give you a definition yet, because you may have heard of it through these other words. Virtual exchange is the big word right now in the EU. And I think here as well. It's the word that's being used right now. There's other words, the idea of teletandem, globally networked learning, online interaction and exchange, but they all cover the same general idea, which is the use of technology. It may be internet, it used to be very much computer mediated. It's moving now to smartphone mediated, but it's all about connecting distanced learners. It's all about using languages. It's all about learners, maybe different levels. You may have them homogeneous, you may have them different, one level teaching another level. It's about learning, ideally. It may not happen, but ideally. And it's about exchange of opinions, ideas, knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the whole idea of telecollaboration. And it's been, and again, we were talking about this, it's been applied in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different configurations. Most people consider it to be online conversations, just chatting to learn a language. That for me is not telecollaboration, but some people do put it as that. It could be synchronous or asynchronous, right? Online task, you're familiar with synchronous, asynchronous, right? A lot of telecollaboration is task-based, the idea of having the students do a task, and then there's more open configurations, which is about maybe group work, role plays, problem solving, or even long-term project-based learning, which is where what I'm doing, is where I've focused most of my work. So we saw that it's not that well known, and it's known in different names, but it is becoming more and more, slowly but surely becoming more mainstream. But even as early as 2013, as recent as 2013, telecollaboration was not mentioned in any European education policies. That changed 2 weeks ago. And the European Union just published their last education policy, and the one big word that they mentioned was virtual exchange. And they're willing to put millions of euros behind it. So that's really going to push what this is to the fore, I think. And you have the Vance Stevens Foundation, I believe, here. Okay, I'm not a think tank education. That's really, they're going to start putting a lot of money into it as well. The rumors are that virtual exchange is also going to get start getting money here as well. So it is moving in, becoming more mainstream. Now, there's reluctance, there's resistance to it, and there are reasons that are well documented. There's still significant challenges. Time, effort, okay, sure, yes, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but then any teaching does, I think. It doesn't merge very easily with teacher-centered practices, and that's going to probably be the biggest problem you have with your own students, because new teachers are afraid to let go, but you have to let go. I'll give you some examples in a minute. It's easier to find partners with more major languages. So I would say Russian is harder to find a partner than in English, because you got classes that people want to learn English in Mexico. So Mexican or Spanish and English, easier to find partners. If you're teaching Urdu, it might be harder to find partners, so that's another challenge. International does not equal intercultural. Just because you're matching people up doesn't mean they're really going to learn interculturality, intercultural competences. A lack of continuity with partners. A lot of times you start up a partnership and then they kind of fall apart. Different curricular aims. If you have one partner whose objectives are in one area, you've got others, it's hard to mesh your interests. Different assessment practices, large classes. Students may not like it. I can give you examples. Okay, so I've just told you why you shouldn't do it. Okay, now I'm going to try to give you some examples of why you should. Okay, are you okay? Are you bored out of your minds yet? No? Okay. Ready to throw tomatoes yet? No? Okay, good. All right, let's see if this link works. This is an educational program, a project-based language learning that you'll see the kids here. They're grown up now. They're like 13, okay? But where you're going to see them here, they're 6, all right? If this link works. Brief summary. It took a year with this project. But what the students were doing, and then I'll show you a 3-minute video that summarizes it, but you may not catch it all. It's a cross-disciplinary project. The students were 6 years old. They were just beginning English as a foreign language in both classes, in Catalonia, Spain, and in Vienna, Austria. Okay? So they were exchanging. What they were doing, they were introduced. What we wanted to do at first was to have them, those Tamagotchi thingies that you have to take care of, because the teachers met. They looked at what they both had in their English as a foreign language course books and saw that there were things like physical descriptions, sports, and food, typical. So from that, they decided they were going to do a project on healthy habits and make it cross-disciplinary. And at first, we proposed Tamagotchis. And the teacher said, no, 1, it's too costly, we can't afford that. And 2, what if they die? Because Tamagotchis can die. And they said, they're 6 years old, don't do that to them. Because if they don't take care of them, the Tamagotchis, it was a little technical, it was a little digital pet that if you didn't feed and take care of, it would die, okay? So the teachers vetoed the Tamagotchis, and so we put our heads together and we came up with asking some avatars in Second Life. We made what's called machinima. That's little video clips using avatars. And we have 2 avatar scientists who ask each class to help them in their science experiments, which is to observe young men and women and what happens when they have healthy or bad habits. Because again, the teachers vetoed saying, okay, you divide half the class and you tell them, go eat chocolate and hamburgers for a month and see what happens. You go home and don't take a shower for a month. Because the teacher said, nope, we're going to have problems. But you can do that to avatars, because you can modify the avatars. So of course, Smelly Susan was interviewed every week about what was happening, and she said, you know, I'm getting spots and skin's itching and I've got lice. And by the 3rd or 4th interview, Smelly Susan is looking pretty ragged, and the avatar scientist who is interviewing her is wearing a First World War gas mask, because you can do this with avatars. Game Boy Gary was having serious health problems with backaches, and Hungry Helga had put on quite a bit of weight because she was just eating pizza, et cetera, et cetera. So the students were observing what was happening in case studies. You'll see a picture in a minute. And having to, and again, remember, their English as a foreign language, that's their first exposure to English, plus 6 years old, they're having to conceptually understand consequences. So they had some sheets, handouts where they were having to observe the case studies and take note of, circle what was happening. And each group, so Spain was getting very similar case studies of Hungry Helga, and Austria was getting very similar, but the results were slightly different. So the first telecollaborative exchange was getting to know each other. The second was exchanging information about what they had seen. And then the third was coming up with solutions for these bad habits. Okay, just very quickly. Okay, would you like to see a video of it? It's a summary.
Hello, my name is Hasim. I'm from Morocco. I speak French. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to just stop right there. This is what we were talking about in the class of using the foreign language as part of communicating with someone else. We're talking 50 students in Spain having to create a voice thread to introduce themselves with very, very limited English. And so teachers and students can die of boredom of listening to 50 students say the same thing over and over again. Okay, just don't do it. It's horrible. So what we had them do with several sessions is to think about how they would say in English. Of course, my name is. They need to know that, but they had to come up with something that was unique about themselves. Not I've got a brother or sister, because everybody, unless it was a twin brother. Okay, so that in itself is now communicating for a real purpose, and also for this young boy, him being from Morocco was up to that point something he wasn't extremely proud of. And when, after discussing this with the class, he realized, hey, I speak French. Nobody else does. You know? And you could just see him become a much more confident person, and this is why he chose to say, I speak French. That was his unique thing for creating this voice thread of introduction.
You see, this is you. The camera is here. The camera is here.
Okay, you can't see this very well because we are filming the students from Spain, and she was pointing, this is what the students are seeing. Okay, so unfortunately with the light you can't see that very well, but you can. There's a picture. This is them, what they were seeing, the Austrian students. Okay, so there was learning about the technology of the lags, et cetera, was another part of the whole process. And it was funny because in the end, one of the students, all the students, when we always had technology problems, and the students, again, first year for English as foreign language, they say, oh, well, Maria, technology problems. She just shrugged her shoulders because she was always saying technology problems. And so the students learned to say, technology problems. And this is where they're introduced to the avatar scientists.
Hey, Maria. Good morning, Manuela. How are you today? In our work, we study boys and girls and healthy habits.
Okay, and there was also a stiff learning curve for us, because what we found out, the researchers were in charge of developing the materials, and what we found out after that, we bored them out of their minds, because we're creating this machinima and we were trying to make it understandable. So, hello, my name is, and the students were like, you know, and the teachers had to tell us, you can speak a little bit louder, right? So it was developing these materials, which we developed with our students in the teacher education class, was a learning experience as well. And also we discovered that you need to be careful about having avatars that come when their default mode, they're very well endowed. and 6-year-olds notice it. Okay, so there were a lot of learning curve here for us as well with the development of the materials. And then we had to create our own resource cards, because there were words like smelly feet, you don't find them very easily in flashcards, right? So here you can see they're watching a case study. So you may have heard that Smelly Susan was saying, it said, look, I have spots. And the little boy says, spots! And they all started circling it. So that's them observing the avatars as they developed their bad symptoms. And this is the exchange of information. Oh, sorry. Okay. Here you have this, an example of the worksheets they were doing. So they're talking to the camera in front of them. So having a shower every day.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And they like your suggestions.
Now, Susan takes a shower every day.
Okay, this was important. The teachers had us add to the materials, because after they had made suggestions, because they had to work together to make suggestions on how Smelly Susan could not have these problems, et cetera, the teachers said, you know, the students made these suggestions, they need to see the results of them. So we went back in and created new machinima, which was not in the plan of the project, so the students could watch. And you can see the comprehension, the language comprehension, because the little girl, what's not captured here is, he says, okay, Smelly Susan has a shower every day, and she started clapping, and she says, por fin se ducha! Which means in Spanish, she finally takes a shower. Okay, so you could see they were excited about the fact that their solutions had helped with these, with the avatars. And then, as part of the assessment, they did a written assessment, but they also were interviewed by the. Okay, right. I need to stop with this. Okay. Well.
Boys and girls, can you tell everyone some healthy habits?
Integrate the bus, drinking lots of water, eating fruits, brushing teeth, brushing teeth.
Okay. So that's an example of one telecollaborative project that we did with research. I'd like to show you what I do in my class, so that you can see different levels. These were very, very young learners, like I said. We have also done some stuff with secondary that you have here. I don't think I have time to show that to you, but this is the way in which I've integrated telecollaboration into my class. Well, I have to say we. We have what we're calling the FIT model. Flipped and in-class instruction and telecollaboration. So we've been doing telecollaboration for 15 years now, continuous. And the main idea behind this is that the students, 80% of what they do, they have a core curriculum, despite the fact that our universities are not in any way working together except for us. And his class is a master's class, mine is an undergraduate class, but we develop a core curriculum, a core syllabus, and 80% of what they do is in collaboration with others rather than what they're doing in class. So if what you can see when they go, for example, we just recently migrated to this web page, so it's not quite complete, but the students know they have a responsibility. You can see they have to sign a contract, didactic contract, for the telecollaboration part, for the flipped class part, and what we try to do is that we're using flipped materials, that sometimes these flipped materials will go into their online meetings. Sometimes what they're doing in the online meetings will go into the class. It's really complex to explain, but just to give you an example of what they may do, if you go down, let's see. So here it says it's recommended that you begin reading the assigned text for third online meeting. So here they have, of course it's not assigned yet because we don't have students yet, but the idea is that the students are all reading a different text. So they would be coming into their online meeting, which they are committed to meet at least once a week. They choose when they're going to meet, how they're going to meet, but they have to meet at least once a week. And they go into the class, into the meeting, and they've been assigned different texts. So the person who didn't read that text is going to be the person who's not able to contribute to that online meeting. So in that online meeting, what they're doing is they've got an hour to decide how they're going to summarize everything and present it to their individual classes. But at the same time, each group is getting, additionally to this summary, a different question or a different task, so that whatever they're doing in the online goes into the class, and then again, if the group hasn't done what they had to do, it won't work. They're the ones that are called out because they haven't done it in the class. So it's a very intricate weave of types of activities, and it takes months of preparation, but once it's prepared, it rolls, right? And I've done sort of some anecdotal research on my own teaching, and since we started this telecollaboration, I've gone from being the person who speaks 80% of the time to approximately, I speak about 15% of my classes the whole year through. I don't have to speak anymore. They're coming into class so prepared, not just because of the flipped materials, but because they're having to then use those flipped materials to prepare things together with people across the world, that by the time they get into the class, they're able to teach it, right? So that's the last example I wanted to show you. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Now are you totally bored? No? Okay. So I'd like to just briefly look at what is not telecollaboration for me, okay? Me, huh? There are other people who would say no. But for me, telecollaboration, first of all, is not just about joining language learners around the world, okay? That's chatting, and they can do that, and you did that, and I'm not putting it down. And that's what teletandem is. But for me, telecollaboration is about collaboration. It's about collaborating together to construct new knowledge. And really, it's all, for me, it's project-based, but maybe not. But if you don't have that word collaboration in there, I don't believe this is truly telecollaboration. I don't think it's technology-centered. And this has been the biggest problem we've had, because our class that I just showed you is about teaching how to use technology, and the students come in thinking they're going to learn all kinds of new technology. They do, but what they have to learn is the technology has to fit what you have already decided you want to do. So it's, what is the communicative purpose of your activity first before you look for the technology? So I don't think telecollaboration is technology-centered. It is the effective use of technology, so it has to fit, right? I think this joke, my son actually asked me that. Why didn't Christopher Columbus just use Google Maps? Why not? I don't know. So what is telecollaboration? It's the axis, it's the class I just showed you. It is the axis of whatever, the whole course for me. And it's again, going back to that idea, I'm no longer the expert in the class. I've opened it up not only to my partner, but sometimes they're interviewing people around the world. They're doing all kinds of things. And they become, and I shouldn't admit this on camera, in many cases they become more of an expert in some areas than I am, because they're dealing with so many other people that I haven't met. So inevitably, I learn things too, and as does my partner. So it is what I believe is the new, it is promoting how what people are saying is how knowledge has to be learned. And it is that idea of crowdsourcing. And if I'm the only one, I'm the only source of their knowledge, they're not learning how to crowdsource. And I love this example, I don't know if you've heard of it, that scientists spent 10 years trying to do a molecular puzzle about a cure for AIDS. And they gave up after 10 years and just put it out there on a forum for video gamers. How do you, I don't know molecular science, but they put out there saying, can you solve this? And 10 days, video gamers came up with a solution. So that's that crowdsourcing. That's what they need to know also, how to take advantage of and harness that power. And this is part of what telecollaboration is. It's a willingness to accept new concepts of teaching, okay? It's a willingness to say, I'm no longer the one who knows. Accepting too that you can really make a lot of mistakes, right? So it's also innovative, I think. And I don't need that definition. So this, just to go over again, with people having 24/7 access, with online learning, with MOOCs just coming in and taking over, with the distance learning, reductions in physical space, budget cuts, we are going to have to adapt, or we may end up right there on the display pedestal with the dinosaurs. And I do feel like that this is a way that I hope, as virtual exchange becomes more mainstream, that people will see the importance of it. So, yeah, okay. And thank you.